And it's forever.
Hey, we're just comparing notes at the moment, ladies. We were comparing notes about husbands, hence the reason that we're still chatting and laughing. So, hey everybody, welcome to Sunday Reflection, where we do a wrap up of the topic that we've been talking about all week this week, and we have been talking about the healthy, happy tummy with Ange Sinclair, the digestive detective. Hey, Ange, how you going this morning?
Hey, Peter, I'm great this morning. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm really good, thank you. And we've had such a really interesting conversation. I've totally enjoyed it and cannot wait to get some feedback from everybody who, has that opportunity to listen. So we talked about like variety and how that's important to our gut health, and we talked about prebiotics and probiotics, and we had a sneak peek of what postbiotics are going to be, and then we moved on to resistant starch. But I thought we might wind the clock a little bit back because I know what your story is. I've heard it before, but those that are listening today may not know that story, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity for you to share that with everybody.
Okay. So for me, I started probably heading towards this business, and I didn't know where I was going because as a child I suffered chronic constipation, and back when I was a child, go home, feed your kid prunes and prune juice and lots of fruit and vegetable, and we were a pretty healthy family. Like we had meat and veg every night, lots of veg. My mum was a big stickler for veg. We would have 5 or 6 veg back, when I was growing up in the 70s. But as I got older, my digestion got much worse. And so I remember having a meal, and I can't remember whether it was junk food. I would assume it was when I was about 16, and I was writing on the floor thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm in so much pain. Nothing's going to take this pain away. So fast forward to my 20s, I moved to Sydney, got this fantastic job, travelled a lot, travelled every day. I would be on a flight every day somewhere, and my digestion got worse and worse. So at the end of it, I then got married, had this episode as a young mum where I would be good and then I would be vomiting just sporadically. And so I went to the doctor, and we actually lived in Melbourne when this happened. My baby was literally 3 days old and this was going on for me. And so I went to the doctor and he said, oh, look, it'll pass. It's probably just from the birth. And then I've come home and I've got a friend in Sydney who's a doctor, and she said, no, you go back there and you tell them you want them to take your liver function test. And in between all this is going on, we moved back to Sydney, and we were literally back 2 or 3 days, and I had another episode. The doctor goes, you need to come in and have an emergency gallbladder removal. So we did that, and they said to me that all these digestive problems I'd been having would be gone as soon as I had that happen. And me going in with blind faith that would happen, I had my gallbladder out and everything actually got worse. And for a lot of people I see in clinic, I see when they have their gallbladder out, because our gallbladder sits underneath our liver, and what it does is it concentrates bile. So whenever we eat fat, it releases a bit of bile to break down the fat. Well, when you have your gallbladder out, there's nothing to store the bile, so it never gets concentrate, so it just drips all the time. And for a lot of people I see, that gives them chronic diarrhea. For me, it made my constipation worse than ever. So consequently, I just thought there's got to be a better way. And shortly after that, I had my 3rd baby, and he was born with really bad eczema around his ears. So every time we pulled his little top off, it looked like his ears were going to come off, and they would bleed, and it was dreadful. And you go to the doctor, and they said, look, he's going to have lifelong issues with eczema. Let's give him some steroid cream. And I just thought bleach fast was my other option. So I just thought, I can't take this new baby and put it in bleach. I'm not doing that. There must be another way. So that's sort of set me off on the journey to find out, because my question that I asked all the time was, does food impact what's happening in my gut? No. Or what does food impact what's happening to my son? No, the food's not involved. And I still hear that today when I get clients coming, they go, I've
Yeah.
been to a gastroenterologist, and they say food doesn't play an issue. Well, that's really not true. I have seen by people just changing the food they eat, really making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people just changing the way they chew, really making a difference, and not changing anything else. So I think it sort of empowered me to go, well, there's a lot of us suffering from gut stuff from a long time. And what we do know now is my mum and her mum both had digestive issues. So we know now that with a lot of research they've done that it is a generational thing, and it normally comes from your grandmother. So if you follow your family tree a little bit, you'll find that your mum or your grandmother or your great-grandmother had some digestive issues because it's passed down through the maternal line, the gut bacteria that you get at the outset. So I think that's pretty fascinating. So that's basically my story, and then I've gone on ever since and, help people with their gut problems. And I think I'm pretty well placed for that because I understand that when you have a gut problem for a really, really long time, everybody gets sick of hearing about it. Your family can only take so much of oh my God, this is a really hard thing to deal with. So it's really nice to be able to work with somebody else who's a bit empathetic to that. And I totally get it as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that when we say the same thing to the people who are closest to us and around us, they do tend to get sick of it and they turn a deaf ear to it as well too. And so we don't get that empathy that we need. So, and then we start to, bottle it up, which is no good on our bodies either, because we're starting to suffer that little bit of stress from it. And that stress impacts our health as well too. So, yeah, it's an interesting cycle, an interesting way that the body reacts and responds to just simple things that we think are just absolutely not important, or that they may have no impact. And we know now that stress has a massive impact. Food has a massive impact on our gut health, but not just our gut health. That affects our brain as well too, because there's that, as you mentioned, that bi-directional communication going on as well too. And so if the tummy wasn't happy and we were having some problems, how would that play out in our brain, for example, Ange?
Well, there's lots of ways, and with our brain, it would be like brain fog. I see so many people with brain fog, poor memory function. You can't, and this is often linked to thyroid as well, the butterfly gland we have here in our throat. Our thyroid plays a part in our gut health too that a lot of people don't think about. And so if our thyroid is a little bit out of whack, which it can be, especially as we head towards those menopausal years, it really changes the conversation we have as well, because most people go, I'm aiming to lose weight, I've got brain fog, I can't remember anything. Like you could be having a conversation if your thyroid's a little bit out and you can't remember what you were talking about. Does that ever happen to anybody? So that's really
totally
thing. Yeah, we do all the time. I'm going, what were we talking about? So that's a really interesting thing, and it can be quite disconcerting when it happens, and it happens. Once if your gut's really out of whack, that can happen all the time, and so you just think, oh, am I going crazy? You have trouble with your emotions. Normally when you would be quite stable and quite focused, you can't. Everything seems hard. You can't process sadness, you can't process anger, you can't process all those sort of anxiety emotions. So that's really a difficult thing for people as well. And that happens a lot when your gut is out of whack as well. The other thing is about weight loss. I think I hear lots of people saying to me, oh, I just want to lose weight. Well, it's almost impossible to lose weight if your gut is really out of kilter. If you're feeling really poor, or you're going to the bathroom, or you're going to the bathroom too much, that will really impact your ability to put on muscle and to lose weight. And I always say to people, focus on getting your gut right and then keep doing the other stuff to get into the habit, the exercise and things like that. You need to do both. And I think that's really important for people to understand. I mean, we're a culture where everybody's obsessed about losing weight. to be honest.
Yeah, we are, and we really should turn that around and become more obsessed with what's going on inside our body, because when we can get the inside right, then, you know, that's just going to filter to the outside. So, yeah, health is inside out,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. And I think that the turnaround for me is we want to be strong as we age. We don't, you know, strong, healthy women. We want to be strong. We don't want to be thin. Being thin as we age is not a great thing for your health, because, you know, your balance,
No.
your bone density, all those sorts of things. We want to have that really good, solid foundation. And I think a lot of us, it's interesting. I watched this show yesterday about this woman, and she said, my whole life I've just never felt pretty. And she was gorgeous. And I think sometimes we just have to accept how we are and that we're enough. And a lot of us really struggle to do that just from the world we grew up in. So I think that's really interesting as well.
Yeah, it totally is. And until we can accept ourselves and, you know, just be who we are, then, you know, it's difficult for other people to do that as well too. So yeah, I can't even remember who said that. There was some famous quote on that, you know. Oh no, it was out of Miss Congeniality, a movie. Sandra Bullock.
Of course it was.
Of course it was. Yeah. And she said something or other about, you know, loving yourself. You know, people love people who love themselves, you know.
That's a great quote. Yeah, that's a great quote.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was some funny little thing. I love that movie, by the way. So oh dear. And one of the things that I was actually thinking about is, like, what are the basic steps that we could take to improve our gut health? Look, I know that water is such a big impact on our whole entire body, and that would be one thing that we could do.
Absolutely.
What else could we do?
Just with the water, I think don't drink too much water either. You know, I see you know, getting the right amount of water for you, there is no real, you know, that 8 glasses a day, there is no real research around that. But we are human beings who are 70% water. We need to take the water that's adequate. You know, like I see women who are drinking 3.5 or 4 liters, whereas that's too much, you know, because that's really, unless you're exercising really hard, that's a lot of water, because it decreases your electrolytes and can throw out how your heart contracts. So, you'll notice when you're having too much water, because things change, you get really grumpy, you get and really angry, because that's your electrolytes changing, and it'll change the way your brain fires. So I always say to women, have the amount of water that you would have a day, and then add a bit more when you do exercise. You don't need to be drinking 4 or 5 liters of water a day. That's way too much, unless you're an Olympic athlete, and then go for it. But the other things we talked about the other day was getting that variety and diversity of gut bacteria, because if you can start with that, even if you have a gut problem, that will start the wheels in motion for restoring your gut. And you might have a parasite, or you might have yeast, or you might have some sort of dysbiotic bacteria, which means it's imbalanced. But by starting off with giving your gut that variety and stuff, that's sort of and the prebiotic vegetables we talked about, that's starting to do restoration of the stomach. And I think that's really, and I think that's really important, because when you go in automatically with antimicrobials or antibiotics, you're killing that gut bacteria again. You may need to do that, but I always think it's really nice to do some healing work before you go in with the killing. Because we live in such a toxic environment, you know, we're exposed to plastics and microwaves and toxic chemicals that we use in our house, and stuff that they spray in the air. If you go to the local oval, they spray it with Roundup and all those sorts of things. So we're exposed to those things anyway. So it's really nice to take a bit of pressure off the gut by giving it the things that it really loves to have. So I think that's important. That would be the place to start.
Yeah, so definitely having the variety. And I think there was one thing that you did mention, Ange, that stood out for me as well too, was the variety over the week, having 30 to 40, was that right? 30 to 40 different colours?
Yeah. And about 10 prebiotics a day if you can get them in. That's really good too.
Yep.
And one or two pieces of resistant starch every day too. That I think that's fantastic. And that's what I say to my clients who have really damaged guts. They're the things we want to focus on because they do the most restoration. And things, you know, when we talked about the colours, the red, the blue, and the purple, they're really, really good for supercharging our gut bacteria. Legumes are really great for supercharging our gut bacteria. Stewed apple is fantastic for really fixing an unhappy gut, because it is, when the apple breaks down, it's full of pectin, and pectin's really good at soothing the inside of the gut and helping get those tight barriers in our gut back together. So that's a really interesting, easy food for us to do a couple of days a week. And we can have it as a dessert, or we can have it on our bircher for breakfast, you know. So I'm all about bringing those things in too. The other food that I really love to tell people to eat is hummus, homemade hummus. It's easy to make.
Oh, yes.
Supercharges your gut bacteria. If you haven't had hummus for a long time, or you haven't had legumes for a long time, don't start out with a big bowl. Just do a little bit. Because otherwise you'll get, you know, the effects of the chickpeas, which might not be so great for you to start with. So I encourage people to just do a little bit every day and bring those things in. And I think that's a really easy way to make steps to improve your gut health. You don't have to be perfect. No, and I think that's important. Everybody thinks they have to get it 100% right. You really don't. You just need to be consistent.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, exercise is exactly the same thing. You don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to be consistent at it. Now, I'm on a bit of a winner this morning, because I had cherries, blueberries, and spinach in my smoothie this morning.
Yeah, great.
So I had a few different colours there. Yeah, and that's what I love about those mix and match type smoothies. You just change the colours up, and it's just so easy. And you know, you get 2 or 3. Oh, actually, I had a little banana in there as well too. So you can get, you know, you can get even more in there. To help as well too. Now the other thing was that, just going back to the resistant starch, I think that also one of the things you mentioned as well was that it needs to be uncooked.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important to highlight, particularly with the oats.
Yeah, the oats need to be uncooked, but the vegetables can be cooked. They just need to be cooled, like the sweet potato and the potato and the pasta and the rice. They need to be cooked and cooled, which sometimes we have leftover rice left. And, you know, that's a really good thing to make the next meal from. I think that's a really easy thing to do. And I do that deliberately now. I make extra. So the next day I can have either a cold potato in my salad, or I can have the cold rice to then add the hot sauce to. So I think once you get your head around the concept, you can really add things to it. Or I cooked, if I make little tiny potatoes, which I sometimes do for dinner, if I boil them, I would make a couple of extra of those and make a little potato salad. That's perfect. That's all you need. That's resistant starch. And I make a potato salad that's got cannellini beans, so I'm getting resistant starch from the legumes, from the potatoes, and I'm getting a prebiotic, so I'm getting lots of things all in one meal. And I think that's a really good thing to people to get their head around. You can do it all in one sitting, and if you get the foods right, you can get your prebiotic and your resistant starch at the same time. So I think that's really interesting.
All in one go. And just remind us, for those who have just chimed in today, just really quickly on why resistant starch is important to our healthy, happy tummy.
Well, I think resistant starch is important because it helps you feed your butyrate, and butyrate's what helps you feed your colon cells. And the things that it does for us, it helps us maintain our blood glucose. What else does it do? It keeps you fuller for longer, so it keeps your blood sugar stable. And I think that's really important as well. And it provides that fuel, that food that then is turned into fuel to feed those colon cells, and that's pretty important. And I think the really great thing about resistant starch is that it's not digested into glucose. Like if you ate a cup of rice or a half a dozen potatoes, it's not the same. It doesn't go through our digestive system the same way. It's physically changed. The CSIRO released a diet, I think last year or the year before, and their whole diet is around resistant starch pretty much. So it's got a lot of good science behind it. So I think it's really valuable for us to do that.
Yeah, and so often that we cut, those food groups out. A lot of us do that, and because I don't know, we think that if we eat carbohydrates, as an example, that means that we're going to, put on weight. But the reality is, the body needs it for fuel, so we do need to eat those things. Yeah.
And I think there's been a real culture away from carbohydrates. The paleo diet has really mucked us up in some ways, because we took out legumes and we took out the carbs, and I think that's problematic. And I have seen, like, I've had more than one client that has been high paleo for a really, really long time. They have one course of antibiotics and they're shattered. Their gut takes a really long time to recover. They're in pain. They've got digestive symptoms of all sorts. So I would always encourage people to have the carbohydrates, especially if you're doing exercise. There's good research to say that you really need it. And I think that's important that we do that. Food is not the enemy.
I personally like to try all those things out, because I like to see how that affects my body. Oh, yeah, okay. Do the research on yourself. Yeah, and what I found for myself was, like, my stomach just felt like it was just like a balloon, like it was rock hard, and it wasn't happy at all. And I went, wow, this is just amazing. Just by swapping out, cutting out certain foods, how my body reacted to that.
Yeah. I mean, around food, I like to think of food as, I like to think about being more expansive than being contractive. I think we should be able to go out. If you're in really good health, you should be able to go out and eat most things. There's a caveat around that, though. If you have an autoimmune disease, there's some things that you're going to have to figure out what sets you off. But for most people who have a reasonably healthy gut, I would prefer you eat everything, not restrict things, because that gives you a mindset of starvation and deprivation to start with. And I think that's not a really good place to be in the world. I think the more you can put into your diet, food for me is about joy and about food and about spending time with people you love. It shouldn't be this really contractive thing where we're frightened to eat. Like, I had a young girl yesterday afternoon in clinic, and she said to me, I've had this bug, and what you told me the last time, because she phoned for a free 15-minute, and I'd give her a whole lot of things to do, and she went off and did them, and I hadn't heard from her for a year. And she said, now this thing I've got sick, and this has flared up, and all these things have come back. And she said, but now I'm so frightened of food, I don't know what to eat, because I've been told by somebody I should be keto and I should be paleo and I should be all these things. She said, I'm so frightened, I'm not actually eating anything. And I don't think that's a really great place to be either.
No, that's totally terrible.
Yeah, food is our fuel. And for me, food is enjoyment. And we should be able to go out and enjoy food, with our friends and our family, and not be going, oh, I can't eat that dessert tonight because, I'm not allowed to have the breadcrumbs on the top, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
and as you said, if you have some type of intolerance or some reaction to certain foods, definitely don't have them. But in the most part, we should be able to eat foods. But the other aspect of it is, we're talking about real food. We're not talking about the stuff that comes out of packets and whatnot. So it's really, just getting back to those basics of eating and fueling our body in a way that it responds and it's healthy and it's happy, and that's what it's all about.
Agree, totally. And I think that as we move towards, the enlightenment of people about real food, I think that more people understand, once they start eating it, how good they actually feel, not eating stuff out of packets. Does that mean you'll never eat anything out of a packet? I don't think so. Because sometimes you just need to. But, the more you make yourself and you know what's going in it, you feel good in your body. You don't want to go back to what you had before. It's that easy, really.
No. Yeah. Totally. It totally makes you feel so much better in yourself physically and
Yeah,
emotionally. So it's wonderful. Yeah.
agreed.
And absolutely delight having you on board this week. Make sure you put a link up so that everybody can, come and have a chat with you and get to know you a little bit better, because I'm sure that you will be able to help them get their healthy, happy gut and live whatever life it is that they aspire to live. So,
Yeah.
and that's what's important. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
thank you for
totally.
having me, Peter.
So,
It's been a joy. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
oh no, my pleasure, totally. It was fantastic. So bye, ladies. We shall see you all very, very soon. We'll see you next week. See you Monday, tomorrow. See you soon. See you,
Thanks.
Ange. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.